Okay, with Son Roberts, The Sea is the short film, experimental in nature, environmental. It is, I think, what did you call it? You called it a jazz monologue or a jazz poem?
Yeah, it's one of three jazz monologues that we're planning to complete. This is the first one. They've all been written by my partner, co-producer Frank Francis, who's originally from Jamaica, and they'll all star the same actor, Luther Hansraj from Guyana, and we expect we'll probably use the same music artist to actually provide the music bed, Dr. Kahil El Zabar. And so, yeah, I'm very honored to be part of it. It's not an environmental movie per se. It's really more about. I think it's more about social justice and human rights, and
Yeah,
specifically the black experience coming over from Africa, and the fact that there's a whole movement to actually just redress history and say, you know, the slaves were treated well in America. It's like what's going on here with regard to the denialism that you hear about residential schools. It's to me, it's nauseating, and so I think this film is just sort of a step in the right direction to say, look, let's just keep telling stories that are the true stories, the real stories, and we can
yeah.
actually heal from that. You can heal a lot better from knowing what the truth is than burying the truth. And at some point, someone comes along and says, "Oh, by the way, this is the truth," and you're like, "Oh."
You don't. What's the saying? You don't. People don't hate the person who commits the crime, but they hate the cover up. The cover up is
Exactly.
worse than the crime,
Exactly. Exactly. I
right?
mean, the crime is bad enough. My attitude is like it's really a
Yeah,
function of the crime was bad enough. Do we have to add insult to the injury by just
yeah,
lying about it? Like, I've always felt that that's been the issue in a lot of my life. I grew up in a period of time, when I was younger, back in the '60s, where there was a lot of militancy, a lot of issues with human rights, and we just seem to be going back there again. Only now it's like tech bros and billionaires basically, having this dystopic view of the world that, they think we're all gonna they think we're all gonna have the jobs in order to afford to buy the stuff that's going to be available to us on AI when we don't have the money that the jobs paid us to have. You know what I mean? I had this conversation with people years ago, and they said, "Oh, you know, we got to raise the price of our product because auto workers are making too much money." And I said, "Don't you want the auto workers to be able to afford to buy the cars they make?"
yeah, yeah. Well, I grew up in the grocery store industry, right? So, and it was like it would be a clerk, not just a manager of a produce department, like a clerk, full time clerk. He had a house and he had two kids that he was raising, and everything was good. That's like an impossibility now.
Yeah,
Like you can't work at a grocery store and own a house, much less
yeah.
rent own anything, right?
Yeah, but the
So
CEO, but the CEO of the grocery store is making $20 million a year, and I've always asked myself the question: how does that particular individual add $20 million worth of value to that? When you take a look at a basketball player, hockey player, people whine about them making money. They drive business. They actually
yeah,
drive business, and they perform. What does a CEO do? A CEO do is just part of the same club of mostly white pricks who just say, yeah, yeah, he's worth $17 million in the private sector. Well, I should get that working for the government. That's like a standard trope, but that's got nothing to do with my movie.
no. I got you. It just, but it kind of does, right? But
Yeah.
because, but your film kind of goes after, like, I love the visuals, but let's just talk about the text. It kind of goes after kids in a lot of ways. Like, it's like it's really like has some, like, it's kind of not going after kids. I guess it's about wrong to put it, but it's trying to mentor children and saying maybe like this is the way you should be. Maybe this is the way you should look at life, kind of thing.
I think that's a possible interpretation, but I know for a fact that the film's audience is the parents of those kids,
Yeah,
is the parents of new kids, and even the parents of the parents. For kids to to push back and say, what is the truth of how we got here? Why do I still feel like I'm the other? I thought we all fixed that. So I don't think it's really targeting kids. I think what Frank says in the script at the end is that you know the kids will appreciate the truth, and they will forgive us for not telling it to them sooner. And I think that's really a very compassionate, optimistic wrap up to a film that it otherwise is really just a not just, but I mean it really is a pretty
yeah,
measured rage moment for our actor Luther to bring this particular text alive and say, If we don't tell them the truth, if we don't have the courage to tell them the truth, they'll make up the truth of their own. And that may not necessarily be helping them. And in some respects, I don't think it is helping them. So I think it's really a function of having a film that encourages generations of families, all the way back to if your grandparents are still alive, ask the questions, get some
Yeah.
answers, pursue the truth. And I think it got a very positive message at the end, which is one of the reasons I got on board in the first place.
Well, I'll play the devil's advocate with you a little bit, and I think how we got here is that there's a certain people in the past, right? That's the way the world was then, right? Like even when you watch movies, like there's things that you can't do in a movie now, right? Like in terms of like blackface or like even the way they treated women. Like it's like even in the '90s, you watch these movies, and it's like the way they're treating a woman is like so disgusting, right? But that's what they did back then, right? And I think what happened in like after during COVID is that there was this resistance of like canceling everybody for what you did. Let's cancel Lincoln. Let's cancel John McDonald. Let's like you know what I mean? Like let's cancel all these people for what they did back in the day when things were normal. That's what everybody did back in the day, right? And I
Mm.
think that's what is happening. And then all of a sudden, the right wing party, I'll call them that, they said, okay, look, everybody's mad at that, so we're going to take advantage of this and say, you know what I mean? It's like there's no nuance, there's no middle ground. Everything kind of flip flop to the extreme, I guess, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, that's the nature of the human condition. That's the human journey. Humans are constantly trying to see the world in really stark relief. Everything is either all right or all wrong. Everything is all black or all white. That's the nature of what it is. It's in the nuance. It's
Yeah,
in the fact that you just said, well, we don't do that anymore. We don't do that anymore. We don't do that anymore. We still do lots of stuff
sure.
systemically where women are subjugated, people of color are brutalized. It may not be as evident here in the Toronto area. It may
Yeah,
not be that evident in Canada, but it's pretty evident in a lot of other respects all around the world. And even to the extent that we consider ourselves evolved and that we're a civilized population here in Canada, and maybe I would think lots of people in America think they're civilized, they still treat people of color like garbage. Women are still the number one victims of domestic crime. They're the number one victims in all of the pornography that is propagated over the interweb. So, plus ça change, c'est même chose. Like as much as things change, things still stay the
yeah,
same, and
100%.
you've got to continue to push back against that expectation that, well, yeah, things have gotten better. And you get into the carpet fibers just a little bit. Things haven't gotten nearly as better as they should. They've gotten better for rich people. They've gotten better for a lot of rich people. But the sad story is that even people who look like you and me, Matthew, okay, you and me, brother, can't get that job as a grocery clerk and make a living, can't afford a house. So it trickles down to everybody, and everyone gets treated like shit because we just allow stories to propagate that, in order to be successful, you got to be white, you got to be an executive, all of those sorts of tropes that continue to pile on. So I think a film like this stands in resistance to that, to say, no, there are other stories that we need to tell, not just about black
Yeah.
people, but about women, about children, and about the environment, as you said, that are really necessary if we're going to have any kind of chance, to have a more just and a more compassionate and a kinder
Yeah,
society.
I couldn't agree more. And that's for the films like this, but it's also like conversations like this. But like, you're 100% right. And it's like, and that's been like these are like hard conversations. This is not a hard film to watch. It's an easy film to watch because it's so beautiful. But at the same time, it's like he's speaking his point of view, and it's a profound point of view, right? And yeah, you're 100% right. I think what you're asking is that everybody kind of has a fair chance, and we're not everybody has a fair chance right now.
Yeah, exactly. And more we see the opportunity for fair chance to be systemically, shut down just by virtue of how, we run the society. Even most Americans, if you ask them today, they would say that their political system is just inherently corrupt because of all the
Yeah,
lobbyists and all the rest of that. Canada, it's a little better because of the nature of how we have a parliamentary democracy. And even then, you get people lose their minds, and get really pissed off because they don't feel they're getting represented. And that's the thing that concerns me. And that is the backlash that human beings continue to ignore. Like when people get pushed so far, then they start doing stuff that isn't even in their own interest, but it's just
Yeah,
destructive.
yeah,
And I think,
100%.
yeah,
There's a cause and effect for everything, right? Like the reason why someone resorts to like depression or drugs or like crime is because there's a cause to it. There's like they're not bad people. It's just that you know what I'm trying to say, right? Like there's like we're all kind of we want to survive. We want to like live, and you know,
I mean, people look. What's the? I've learned a lot about life over the years I've been around, and one of the things that most people really want, and most people try to live, is they just want to have a pleasant life where they can feel pleasant. They can feel some sense of protection, some sense of safety. And if you're a black person, which is what this film is about, you know, in so many regards, you're still the other. You're still the person who sticks out. You're still the person who's got to watch, where they got to be. We're the ones who think we're under threat because we've been told that black people are criminals. We've been told
yeah,
that the Chinese people are doing this, and we're never told that the Americans are, among the most, criminal organization in the United States. Just look what's going on now. So
yeah,
it's just one of these great ironies about how we get told these stories about, it's always the other. Well, it's mostly us that's causing the problems. So I think that's kind of sad. And the other thing is that, when you take a look at the problems that we have in the world, and this particular movie, speaks about one specific problem. They're all rooted in that same basic, trope. Identify the other, vilify the other, criminalize the other, and then you can legally euthanize the other. That's how we roll. That's what we do, you know. And it's happened to generations, for millennia. It's happened to populations for millennia. It's just you do that process. You find them, you make them make everyone think they're bad. Then you can pass laws to get rid of them. And then what
yeah,
do you do? Well, you get rid of them. So
yeah.
that's we're still doing that now, brother.
We still the technology and the world has changed. Humans haven't changed. This is if you want to go on the macro, this is the human evolution is a failed experiment because we shouldn't be dominating the world like we do, right? So
Yeah, well, I've said, and it's not popular, that sadly, too much of what humans have wrought on the planet doesn't make a case for us being one of the best species that's ever been allowed to evolve on the planet. Like it's not a good case
no,
for
no,
us.
we're not. We're not the best. We're not even the smartest. But that's human narcissism, right? Like
Yeah,
that's we
yeah.
think that we're the best, right?
Yeah, yeah. There's a certain arrogance about that, and I think that
But
that's probably the subject for a whole other film. There's a lot of comedians that talk about this. One of my favorites is George Carlin, long gone now, but I grew up listening to George Carlin, and I'm not jaded. Like I'm not a cynical person. I wouldn't
no,
be involved in making a film like this if I felt cynicism was the best option. I find that I'm more directly and productively militant about what I think is the right path as I get more experienced and older, and I get a chance to have conversations like this, and have an opportunity to work on a film with such fantastic, passionate people like Frank and Luther and Cahill and my shooter, excuse me, Jackie Maloney shot this, just knocked himself out. My sound guy, Dave Junior Boire, worked on the soundscape, and of course we did the coloring with Christos Evangelos. So we had such a great, tight little team, that made this thing happen. And in fact, Frank's daughter was one of our production assistants, as was my lovely bride, Nancy McGovern. So we had a great team of people, great donors, and we raised a pile of money, to get this thing done. We didn't have a lot of money that we put into it, but we raised twice as much money as we could seed it with. And so I'm really proud of the fact that, community has come around about this. It's really grown around this particular film. And I'm looking forward to, getting it out there a little more.
so you got two more you're going to do? Is that what you said at the beginning?
Yeah, the two more of the scripts are in development. They're pretty much wrapped up, and we're talking about some post-production, some pre-production thoughts about how we want to shoot them, but we're still looking for funding on that. So Frank is doubling down in his efforts to do that, see if we can get some seed funding, and then we'll probably go back to the people and say, hey, here's the next film. The other two films are also very much Afrocentric. One is about an individual who was an instrumental whistleblower on the Algerian revolution. the Algerians revolted against the French, and the French were just as bad as anybody you might imagine when they treated the Algerians. And then the third film is something called Home, which is a really interesting discourse that I think is going to make a wonderful film about just what does home mean and how fragile the concept of home is. And I think it's a particularly relevant film, given where we are right now, where lots and lots of people just are looking at the idea of buying a home. It's like, that's never going to happen. And that's a
Yeah.
tragedy.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's not going to
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah.
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 Okay, so let's talk about the visuals of the film because you brought up Jackie. So you had the obviously you had the text, and then he's going to say the text. So did you kind of write a script before that, and kind of like figuring out visually how you're going to do this? Because I know you have some stock footage and stuff like that, but a lot of it's just him having a conversation with the audience, and you're kind of making it visually interesting. I'm sure you
Yeah.
kind of went into a room or kind of went into a studio with Jackie, and you kind of put it all together that way.
Yeah, so I put together a pretty comprehensive treatment, which was essentially I storyboarded out the entire piece. And
Yeah,
each segment that Luther was going to do, I storyboarded that. We went to a live theater, like a live production theater on Queen Street East in the Leslieville area here in Toronto, and we shot it over 2 days. And so we used theater lighting. I wanted Luther's character to be this kind of apparition, this spectral, ghostly kind of being that sort of appears, disappears, reappears. We take him out of the studio at some point and run him along a railroad track to evoke that
yeah,
sense of the Underground Railroad. And we bring him back and forth, in a very spectral way. So when Jackie and I were talking about it, Jackie and I have worked together closely on a lot of stuff. And so I said, look, I just want him to look super, super real, like very, very real, high contrast. I want to see every pore in his skin, and then I want him to vaporize, and I want him to disappear, and I want him to reappear. So when we took it into the coloring suite with Christos, he was just a magician about taking this fantastic raw footage that we put together in the rough cut and just bringing out, the contrast even more and bringing out, those stock images that we had of lynchings and black protesting and that sort of thing. So and then when I sat down with Dave to talk about the soundtrack, I said, look, I don't want the music is going to be the bed, and where the music is going to work with the actual storyboard. That was tricky, but I think we pulled it off really well. And I said to Dave, I want to hear what it would sound like on one of these boats. I want to hear the terror in people's voices. I want to hear the bullwhip. I want to hear that
yeah.
sense of struggle. And so, and we actually won an award for that, which was really neat. We won an award for music and soundtrack. So, I
Oh,
think,
I believe it. It's great.
yeah,
I,
thank you.
I wanted to make a touch. I love how you did the credits.
Yeah, the
Uh,
credits is a story. There's a story in the
yeah,
credits.
I love it.
Thank
That's
you.
a yeah, I love it. Where did you get all those photos from for the credits?
You know what? I got some photographs from Brock University. They got a fantastic sort of black archive
Really?
museum. Yeah, Brock University. Well, that's where that down that Niagara region. That was basically the landing point for a lot of free men and free women who were coming up via the Underground Railroad.
Yeah.
So
I was
they got
born and
some
raised in
wonderful.
Niagara Falls.
Yeah. Well, there
I
you
got
go. So
so
yeah,
many family members who work at Brock. I had no idea that they had that.
yeah. So I got a break there because I met a wonderfully educated and talented woman when I went and watched Slave Play at Canadian Stage, and she was doing a sort of a pre-show conversation with the director, and she's from McGill, and she said, "Oh, we don't have too much at McGill, and I can't hip you anything to there, but you should go take a look at Brock." So I went to Brock. I went to the American Library of Congress. For a lot of those images, that's American Library of Congress. That stuff is all in the public domain,
Yeah.
and so I got very lucky in terms of doing that. And we got a lot of help from Soleil Francis, Frank's daughter. She found that rough footage of a huge civil rights protest that took place in the United States. All that, that Angela Davis shot of her at the microphone, and then at the end where you see this young kid who almost looks a little bit like Luther, and he's talking, and he's like a 15-year-old kid. That's all from the footage that Soleil found. So, when you really commit yourself to something and you got good people, you get lucky. And so that's one of them. That's one of my mantras: do good work and you get lucky. So that's what's happened there.
The film is 10 minutes. I think it's 10 minutes exactly, which I find interesting too. But you maximized every second in this film. Like you
Yeah.
really thought through every frame, every motion in the film. That's what I. You can see it. I've watched it a few times, and I'm just like, yeah,
Thank
this
you.
is Yeah, because you get something new out of it every time you watch it too.
Yeah,
So
thank you. Yeah, no, we the script was that tight. I saw rehearsals of the script in a establishment that Frank runs out in the West End here called Context. And so I actually shot an animatic of Luther doing it and stitched that together as a rough, and then showed it to Frank and said, you know, this is the direction I want to go in. And the next time Frank saw the film was when it was finished.
what did you think?
I sat there in his event space called Context, and I was there with Luther, and it was dark. It was just I brought this computer that you and I are talking on, this big Mac thing. I brought it, and I set up, and I said, okay, here we go. And so it ended, and I looked at Frank, and Frank looked at me, and I didn't say anything, and he went, "You nailed it." And I said, "Great." And then Luther, Luther, I looked at Luther, and he went, "Wow." And I don't know if you'll be able to say this on the podcast. You can bleep it up, but then he just started saying "fuck." So at one point, like we're driving, I decided I would drive him back. I said, "Do you want to ride back?" Where he lives is on my way back to where I live. So I get in the
Yeah.
car, and he just looks at me. He goes, "Fuck." And so we're driving along, and I go, you know, so what do you think about the film, Luther? Fuck. And so he just can't, he couldn't stop saying it. And then when we did one of the premieres we did here at the Paradise Theater on Bloor Street, he was very pleased. I think he really felt that his performance. I mean, that guy invests himself in the performance. Let me tell you, he's serious. But he
Yeah.
was a
Well,
great
you
guy to
can tell
work with.
he's an intense guy.
Yeah, but he's a lovely guy. We had a lot of laughs. You know, I like when I'm on my sets. My sets are fun sets. You know, we might be doing serious work, but we're having a good time doing it. So he's a great guy to work with, and I'm looking
So
forward to that.
I think his expectations were reached and beyond, and that's why he kept on saying the word because he was like, "You did it. You like, thank you." Like that was his way of saying thank you.
I think you're absolutely right. And when we finished the shoot on the second day, you know, we're all we're kind of tired, and you know, we're gonna go for some food and some drinks and stuff. And Luther said, "What do you think, son?" And I said, "You know, I think we got it." And Luther says, "We're going to set the world on fire with this." And I said, "Okay, let's go. We got the matches. We got the fuel. Let's just get them together." So we're hoping that this thing has some legs, and we're hoping that we get some support from people, you know, people who are going to be listening and watching this to find out about that. They can go to the
Yeah,
jazzmonologues.com.
just on your website
Yeah,
because it's you want to make more movies of this, I guess,
yeah,
right? Like,
absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah, we think they're important.
yeah. You got a good team, like Jackie Maloney. Like she's like a commercial director or a
Well, it's a
commercial
he.
cinematographer. Yeah.
It's Jackie's a they. I'm not sure what side of that Jackie
Oh,
falls
okay.
on, but
Sure.
he's done a lot of commercial work. But he did a fantastic documentary that's on Crave called "I Am Not an Indian," and it's a really excoriating piece about how some ancient piece of legislation here in Canada called the Indian Act, which is one of the most racist, diabolically evil pieces of legislation, is still
Yeah.
on the books. Still on the books. And I'm glad to say that I had something to do with getting that film right. And I was one of the first guys Jackie called when the film was actually accepted to go on to Crave. He called me up personally and he said, "I just want to thank you, for all the opportunity that we've had
Oh,
together."
I see now. I apologize for that.
That's okay.
Look, I was it's so funny. I was playing a game with a baseball game with my son, and Jackie Robinson was one of the players,
Yeah.
and I just didn't. I just assumed it was a female. Look at
No,
me.
no,
Yeah.
it's a they. Jackie's a
No,
they.
no, no. Like you don't like that's
Yeah.
like. Yeah. I have difficult. I do like LGBT festivals. I still have difficulty saying that at 50 years old. I don't. I'm like I'm trying my best.
Dude, that's it. Just keep trying. That's all you can do is keep
Yeah,
trying.
exactly.
You'll find your footing. You'll slip off sometimes. Whatever.
And
Your
don't
heart's
judge
in
me
the
too
right.
much. Don't judge
Yeah,
me too harshly if I make a mistake, right? So
your heart's in the right place. That's what's
yeah,
important.
exactly. Yeah. Well, yeah. Speaking of Jackie, yeah, Jackie Robinson. Yeah, there we go.
Oh,
Brings it all together.
yeah.
So yeah, this is great. I love it, and I'm just so happy to see because I didn't know what to expect with you, and you seem like you wanted this. There's so much bigger. This is great at what it is, but you're right. Like set the world on fire. Like I see something bigger, like even larger and like more profound.
Mm.
in your future with these kind of projects. I don't
Yeah.
know. That's my instinct.
Yeah, well, I'm working on a number of other projects,
Yeah, I'm sure you are.
that are in, some of them are in the same kind of vein of this. Movies. The great thing about motion pictures is that they're an immersive medium, right? That even what we're doing now is like this multiple thing. It's two faces, it's two voices, it's two settings,
Yeah.
and it has this immersive capability to it, and it has been used. Motion pictures have been used very effectively to change the way people think about things, and that's why you see billionaires trying to take over movie studios because they don't like what people are learning from movies. It's like, no, let's teach them the stories we want to teach them. About how
100%.
billionaires are all good and they're just working for everyone's benefit. And if we can't convince them of that, let's just make more Marvel Universe bullshit.
But that said, it's like the audience still is like the now because of they're still the main cog. If they don't like something, they'll tell you, right?
Oh yeah,
So
oh yeah.
and
Hopefully,
they won't watch it either, right? And then they'll lose
hopefully,
money, right?
yeah.
So
Hopefully,
yeah,
hopefully, let the market decide. But the thing is that you've got to get things into the market
yeah,
somehow.
yeah,
So
yeah. I
you still
understand.
have to
Yeah,
get stuff into the market. So this thing was very much a grassroots thing. Frank ponied up a good chunk of money at the beginning. I donated a bunch of my time. Jackie donated time. Dave, Christos,
yeah.
everyone donated time to get this together. Happy to do that. But it'd be good if we actually had a more robust sort of funding thing where we could, pay people, a better
Well,
than fair wage.
this is destined to be online, right? This film and
Oh yeah,
YouTube, if it goes viral, you can make some good money, right? And then that's your
yeah,
funding, right?
yeah. I'm personally not interested in making money off of
No, no, no. I'm not. What I'm
off of.
trying to say is that it's about funding the next project.
Yes, yeah, oh yeah, yeah. So
So
that's
you
why.
put it on YouTube, you get advertising money, and then that's funding the next project, and then on and on you go, right? That's sort of
Hopefully,
like, and then but that gets more eyes on the project too, right? Instead of
sure.
like that's just the world that we live in now, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, yeah, I agree, and so that's why we're getting it into festivals. We're in this festival. We were in two festivals in L.A. We're in one in Well, we've been in Toronto a little bit. We're going to continue to push it, as much as we can to festivals and maybe even get a little bit of media. I think the next stage is that we're going to reach out to some traditional media and
yeah,
say, what, you should really take a look at this film. Maybe it's worthwhile. Maybe we'll do that next year, because we
100%.
got a little late. Yeah,
All
it's
right. So
it's it's
last
a,
question.
it's
Go
a
ahead.
legacy thing, right? You can keep pushing it, for a long time. Sorry, what was your last question?
No, no. Well, first of all, just finish what you're saying is that this film can go on forever. This film can stay online forever after the festival's run. That's a great thing about film as well, right? Like
Yeah.
it just stays there, and then people keep next generation finds it, and it's like because it's still there. There's something very universal and uh, and like it doesn't matter where you live. This film makes sense. It doesn't matter where you come from. Doesn't 30 years from now, the next generation can watch this and it still will resonate, right? So
Yeah, and I think it's also the kind of film that it can show up places where it'll really piss people off, and so
sure.
so I think
You
that's
know what? The way you filmed it, the way you did it, I don't think it will piss people. I'd be very shocked if it piss people off. Maybe it's not their thing, but it's like, I don't know though. There's a certain artistry, the way he talked and the way you filmed it, that it would be hard to piss people off.
well, I'm just talking about the people who don't think that black people are human beings. That don't.
Well, yeah, but that's like let's just hope that that's like those people don't even know how to turn on a computer, right? So
Well, some of them are really.
am I allowed to take a shot at people, ignorant people? Yeah, so yeah.
Some people with those attitudes are highly sophisticated. They end up in incredible positions of power, like right now in the White House.
No, okay.
You know what I
I'm an
mean?
idealist, okay? Maybe I'm an
I feel
idealist.
you. I feel you, brother.
Yeah. I hear what you're saying. But
Yeah,
that's a grandmaster plan like take on things, right? So
yeah,
like they're yeah, but
yeah,
I get what you're saying. I know what you're saying. So I was gonna ask you the last question. So
yeah.
Joan, it's dedicated to Joan Roberts, has the same last name as you. I'm assuming you're related to them?
That's my mom.
That's your mom. Okay,
Yeah,
great.
yeah. So my
Yeah,
mom loved movies. She
yeah.
loved going to the theater. When she was alive, she passed 3 years ago, and just she was a great inspiration to me. Her resilience and her open mindedness. I went to, for example, I went to a school in Montreal, and it was a working class neighborhood, Côte de Neige, and we had a lot of different kids in that school from all over the place. And I was just fortunate that I never got the memo from my mom that said you got to pick your friends based on what they look like. I picked most of my friends in grade school based
Yeah.
on whether or not they could play dodgeball
Yeah.
and whether or not you could talk to them and laugh and kid around. And I had friends from all over the world, and so she taught me that, and she taught me a love of movies. Like I know so much about movies just from watching movies that she recommended, movies I watched as a kid. With her, and she loved the movies, and so yeah, I felt this being my first sort of outreach. I think it was appropriate. And when Frank, the sweet story about this is that when Frank saw that in the rough cut, he said, "Can I get my mom in there too?" And I said, "Sure, absolutely. What's with?" And my mom, I got a picture of her from the 40s,
Yeah.
in this glamour shot. It's a
Yeah.
beautiful high resolution shot. And Frank sends me this picture of his mom, and I said, it's a really evocative picture. I like it a lot. We don't see her that well. And he says,
Yeah.
yeah, that she would have preferred that. She it's okay if you know it's her there, but you don't need to see her too much.
Yeah. Look
And
at
so
that, eh?
that was
Two
very
guys dedicating their movies to their moms.
well. If you don't have some reverence, I'm not saying this about you. I'm just saying, but if a son or a daughter does not have a healthy reverence for their mother, I mean, your father, sure, no question. Fathers are inspirational characters, but your mom did the heavy lifting for 9 months, and then she did the heavy lifting for a couple of years. While you got up on your feet. So you got to have some respect for that. You got nothing.
I'll say that. I'll say this to you. This is a psychological nugget. Well, I'm not dedicating anything to my mom, right? So
It's
basically,
too bad. That's too
and
bad.
you know what? I'm not jealous. I'm not envious. I'm like, I love because I have kids myself, and my kids love their mother so much, and I love it so much because it's something that I didn't have,
Yeah.
and so basically that you have it is amazing because you're able to make movies like this, and so
Thank you.
basically, and I get 100% what you're saying because I'm seeing it from my kids' perspective, right? So I
Yeah.
love it. So
So you get a
basically,
chance. So you get a chance to redress the past. That's good.
100%.
Nice.
It's a daily therapy trip for me, right? So
Nice.
yeah, but not all moms are great. That's basically what I'm trying to say,
I won't argue that. No.
and it's great that you have one. So all right, man. Well, let's talk again when you make another the next series of this, and anything we can do to help out. I think we're gonna do a festival at the Carlton in like probably late summer, early
Okay.
fall, and I want to bring your film on for a
Oh,
third
thank you.
screening if you're okay with that.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I'll touch base with you. It's on record right now. But I'll touch base with you about that later on, and we'll do a Q&A with the audience and get it out there even more.
Great. Thank you so much, Matthew. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Bye bye.